Saddle up, viewers. It's time to review Disney's The Lone Ranger, which is not the train wreck that you have been expecting. I had to don the cowboy hat to talk about The Lone Ranger. Now, despite what you may have heard by critics, who basically panned the film, and even audience members who didn't show up to the film, thus not meeting expectations by the studio, you know what? Lone Ranger is a ton of fun. Now, when I go to the movies, I typically evaluate them based on 4 standards that I have set: acting, storytelling, various technical aspects like cinematography, lighting, sound, music, etc., and also if it sets out to do exactly what it wants to do. Guess what? Lone Ranger does a fine job in all 4 of those areas, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. Okay, let's start out with talking about the acting, and Johnny Depp is really fantastic as Tonto. He's channeling a lot of the energy we've seen before from Jack Sparrow and Mad Hatter and other quirky characters he's played, which is pretty much every movie he's done, but in any case, he makes the character very humorous, very heartfelt as well, and you just love seeing him on screen in this role. And he serves as a really great complement to Armie Hammer's John Reed. We've seen Hammer before in The Social Network, and he did really great work in J. Edgar, and he really is elevated to a star status role in Lone Ranger. Now, box office receipts might determine whether or not we see him in other big productions like this, but I certainly hope so, because he's very capable. Helena Bonham Carter provides her signature touch to the role of Red, a madam. It's a little disappointing we only see her in a few scenes, but she does nice work there, as does Tom Wilkinson and William Fichtner as well. Now, in terms of the storytelling, it's a little all over the place in terms of the tone. I cannot disagree with the critics in terms of that, but as a whole, it's pretty solid. It's very funny at times. Many laugh-out-loud scenes. I know the audience that I was with, they were hysterical during certain moments, especially when Johnny Depp was on screen. Very gritty as well. Many dramatic moments, tons of action-packed scenes as you could expect. And as a whole, it's pretty cohesive. It gets a little bit harder once you have a longer running time, and it is 2.5 hours long, but it doesn't feel that long. I know I've seen a bunch of recent films that have been at that length, and they just felt overextended. Lone Ranger, on the other hand, it seems like every scene has a place, and it doesn't drag on. I think I had a fun time during the movie, and that may have accounted for that feeling, but I have a feeling that might translate to you as well should you check out The Lone Ranger. The cinematography is stunning. Those western scenes in the desert look really natural, really brings back a lot of that old Hollywood. The music by Hans Zimmer, he channels that vibe from Sherlock Holmes, the Pirates films, and other productions he's done, but he makes it his own. It's pretty unique, and I enjoy listening to it. And in terms of, does this movie set out what it wants to do? You know what? It does. It is so much fun. It really harkens back to those old Hollywood blockbusters, especially when CGI wasn't around. There's a lot of great stunt work and stunning set pieces, I must say. I was quite amazed by what I was seeing on screen. The production value really shows. Certainly we know the budget was extremely high, but as a viewer I would say it was worth it. It looked very authentic, and it really provided nice work for all the actors, and especially those amazing action sequences. Now, I suppose we must discuss the issue of box office. We know this was extremely expensive, $250 million estimated, and that doesn't even include advertising. Will it recoup its budget? I'm sad to say, based on these early box office receipts, most likely not. Disney might suffer a big loss for this. Maybe not as big as John Carter, but still substantial. And it's unfortunate because a movie like this, a Western, it's not going to pick up internationally. We've seen that trend before. They just don't respond as well because they're not as familiar with that genre. So unlike the case of Pirates 4, which didn't do very well domestically, but absolutely wonderfully internationally, that's not going to be the case here. And it's really sad because Disney has been trying so hard to make another franchise akin to Pirates, and they've simply failed in many respects. Prince of Persia, that didn't do well. It did better internationally than here in the US, but that was a big flop, and that was also extremely costly. Tron Legacy, it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it, and I know a ton of audience members did. It has this huge fan base. We know that the next film is in early stages of development, but nothing has really happened significantly in the past several months, so I'm not so sure about that. John Carter was the most famous example, which is really sad because I love the movie. That has a huge fan base as well, but that did not do well whatsoever, and even internationally it couldn't make back how much they spent on making the film. I don't think Lone Ranger is going to do well internationally. It's sad. I think this is such a great platform for a franchise because it offers a different element. We see so many franchises these days that are built on established brands. Lone Ranger, certainly a brand that we're familiar with, but it hasn't really been in the mainstream media in many decades, so it'd be nice to see this be reinvigorated, especially based on what this Johnny Depp Armie Hammer film sets. I don't think that's going to happen, and it's really disappointing. But I really encourage you to check out the film for the amount of reasons that I shared earlier. You're not going to be disappointed if you set your expectations relatively low. It's exactly what it wants to be, and it does it well. So needless to say, I definitely recommend The Lone Ranger. You really will have a great time at the movies. And along the lines of really finding out more about The Lone Ranger, I highly encourage you to check out Disney 23 magazine. If you're not a D23 member, what are you waiting for, as they say in the videos? It is really worth the subscription, and especially you get this wonderful magazine, and this most recent issue focused on The Lone Ranger. It goes into a lot of the production and technical aspects that work together to make this a fun motion picture event. So yeehaw, go Lone Ranger, have a good one, guys.